Code to the clan. Okay. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining the 19th Filecoin Core Devs biweekly meeting. We have a fairly packed agenda today, so we'll see how much we can get through, and also kind of in the interest of time, maybe we can keep updates a little more brief. Maybe I'll kick things off with a quick Lotus update. Yeah, so basically our chief focus has been working on the hyperdrive upgrade, network V13. We put out our first RC for the upgrade yesterday, which is incorporating the Actors V5 RC as well as the latest release as well. So we've just mostly shared it with miners right now so they can kickstart their integration process. There'll be a couple more updates or things that have like changed, mostly tweaks in terms of some of the FIPS that are in V13. We will talk about those outside of our implementation updates. Apart from that, yeah, Lotus V190 has been out for a while now and has generally been well received. And yeah, I think that's about it from the Lotus side of things. Let's see, Forrest, do y'all want to go?
Yep, Forrest here. Yeah, so over the last 2 weeks, we still going through that audit. Things look pretty nice so far. Just some configuration bugs that were found, or I guess misconfigurations found on the libp2p layer, but we fixed those pretty quickly, and everything seems to be running really nicely. We're still getting metrics up. We have most of the groundwork done now. We're just like building out Grafana dashboards and stuff, but just looking at like rough metrics using like HTOP, our performance and RAM and all that looks pretty nice. And yeah, so we're also we made big improvements to our RPC stuff, which enables us to rapidly build out like our CLI, which is ongoing right now. And we are starting to implement network V13 next week. Should be fairly straightforward, in my opinion. So yeah, that's I think that's kind of, oh yeah, we got we're getting our state migration stuff in. We have everything done. We're just kind of doing some benchmarks on the kind of parallelism and all of that we want to do, just to make it so that doesn't choke our CPU, but also is fast enough. And yeah, that's it.
Sounds good. One quick question that I did have is there an end date to the audit that's going on?
I believe from our talks with the auditors and with Deep before, it was supposed to be around 6 weeks. So I think we're approaching the tail end of it, if I understand correctly. Yeah.
Sounds good. Cool. Thanks. All right. Maybe we'll get an update from Venus.
Okay. Can you guys hear me? Oh, okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Deeting from IPFS Force. As Steven is on a business trip, so I will share the information from Venus team this time. In the last 2 weeks, we focused on the following stuff. First, I think we kept up with the hyperdrive upgrading. Second, we are preparing for the Venus incubator, communicate with the interested miners. And we are making Venus a chain as a service with high availability. So we brought several features and optimizations into Venus Message, Venus Wallet, and we refactored some piece of the code and added more tests and documents. And so in the ongoing sprint, we are implementing a 4-node coordinator, which can do the real-time selection from a number of upstream nodes based on their chain heads, and proxy the request to one of the selected nodes. And we are implementing a component hosted by the miners, which will join the Venus project to provide winning post computing and signing functions. Also, we're designing a different sealer and worker architecture. We are aiming at simplifying the sealing state machine. So I think that's the, okay.
Cool. Yeah, very cool. Thanks. Yeah, I think Venus is really doing some very innovative things in the mining space of the Filecoin ecosystem. So I think it sounds really cool, and I'm excited to see more and more people pick those things up. All right, let's hear from the Fuhan team, maybe.
Thank you, Ayush. Good evening, everyone, and good morning, good day. So from our side, not so many updates. Actually, we had a decent amount of our team having vacation past week. So, but we did prepare some interesting stuff beforehand. So what we did was we have bootstrapped the LipP2P node, living its own life and running for more than, I think it's more than 8 days now. And memory consumption on the LipP2P level seems really straight. So it deviates about 30 megabytes in 8 days. So it goes up, goes down, and nothing really major. So what we did also, we have launched Full-on nodes itself, and we have prepared some core dumps. So we are doing some not really interesting work on finding the root cause for memory consumption and what might be the reasons for it. So it will probably take some more time as there are like lots of parts which can be influencing the consumption. So unfortunately, it takes lots of time. So that's it on our progress.
Sounds good. Yeah. Go ahead. Well, I hope you folks had a nice vacation, and yes, you have my sympathies. I think we've said this before, but yeah, fixing memory leaks it's not easy, and yeah, I hope you guys have some luck with it. Yeah. Cool. Thanks for the update, though. All right, real quick from the so next up, yeah, from the community side of things or the Filecoin Foundation side of things, is there an update we'd like to share?
Hi, yeah, I can jump in from the Filecoin Foundation side, just a little bit on some bug bounty news and how we'll be organizing that among different implementers. So a few things still need to be ironed out, but Filecoin Foundation has sort of taken over the coordination aspects, at least, of handling bug bounties in the Filecoin ecosystem. Obviously, with implementers, we kind of have to work out exactly how we're going to rank awards. Like probably it's going to end up that the more nodes you have in the network, the higher percentage of nodes you have in the network, the higher the rewards, but it's always going to be ad hoc to the developers how severe something actually is, whether it affects the protocol as a whole or just implementation, etc. But what I do need, and I'll be reaching out to every implementer team, is like one person from each team that I can kind of use as my go-to guy. By the way, I'm Dudley. I was at a meeting a few weeks ago. I'm working security at the Filecoin Foundation. I probably should have started with that. But I'll have one point man from each team, or point woman. And essentially, there are going to be ingresses of bugs from everywhere, right? If you've dealt with security reports in the past, you'll know that you're going to get them in Slack rooms, you're going to get them in personal emails, you're going to find them just online. And sometimes they'll come to the correct location, sometimes they won't. So essentially, if your team gets a bug report, whether it's on GitHub and you can consider it significant, that might be worth rewarding, you can contact me. All of this is going to be formalized in a lot easier way to do it. For the time being, if you guys can either just reach out over Slack or security@filecoin.org, whatever. There's whatever way you find. It will be easier and more. I'm sorry, was there a message there? Yes, that would be awesome. Thank you very much, Jeff. So yeah, one point man for each person. This will also probably be similar when we're organizing audits, for example, for Fuhan in the future. And hopefully that makes sense for everyone. Again, this is still something that it's kind of it's like coming over by osmosis at the moment, but eventually we'll have a formal plan on how to deal with these sort of things and how rewards will be coordinated.
Sounds good. Yeah, glad to hear this stuff is in progress. It's obviously critical to the broader Filecoin ecosystem. And for the benefit of folks doing the recording, Jennifer flags in chat that Dudley should be added to the implementer channel, which I think totally makes sense. So we'll make that happen. Okay, cool. Anything else in the way of updates that anyone wanted to share before we dive into our somewhat large agenda? Sounds good. Okay, so let's talk network v13 actors v5 stuff. So a couple of quick little housekeeping things. There's this issue in the TPM chat in the TPM repo that introduces that tries to concisely summarize all of the protocol changes that are being landed in this upgrade. We'd like to make this a thing consistent going forward, where every time we have a network upgrade, we detail what FIPS are in it and any other like non-FIPed changes. So these are like protocol tweaks or minor bug fixes that we may have in the network upgrade. And that way, even folks who aren't part of this call or in the core implementers groups, if someone wants to implement a Filecoin protocol, the Filecoin protocol, they can keep up with mainnet. So that's one to flag. Second thing quickly is InterruptNet is live or is going live as we speak, and it will be starting from v5 actors directly, which I know is important to some people here. At least at one point was important. Yeah, supported sector sizes will probably be 2K, 8 megabytes and 512 megabytes, I think. And yeah, we'll share how to connect to that. This will be a test network exclusively for this group, essentially. So so the funds will be fairly tightly controlled, but if anyone here needs some funds to test it out, we can just like send some transactions. Yeah, so that's finally happening, and hopefully that'll be helpful. Cool. I think the next thing to talk about in terms of network v13, v5 actor stuff is the changes that the final set of changes that landed to FIP13. I don't know if Zen or Juan, I don't know which of you wants to go over them, but I think it'll be useful to brief the rest of the group.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, thanks.
Yeah, happy to go through it. Aisha, you want me to go through just the batch discount and batch balancer and so on, or do you want me to go through more?
And I think specifically that that's kind of what changed in the past couple of weeks for the most part.
Yeah, totally. So, and then if you want to, I don't know if you want to do a bit of an intro beforehand around gas usage and so on, but I can also take it.
Yeah, feel free to take it. There are a few like minor parameter changes we can talk about after, but I think this is the bulk of it.
Yeah, totally. Thanks. Great. So James and I and a few others have been looking at the crypto econ considerations for adding all the aggregation and adding aggregation of proofs. There's a whole bunch of different incentive considerations with a change of this magnitude, adding this much onboarding capacity and so on. We summarized a lot of those changes in the incentive consideration section of the FIP. I think everybody's probably read through it and so on. So I'm gonna kind of maybe just talk about the mechanism here instead of go through the incentive considerations, but happy to dive into those if useful. The mechanism in question adds a component called this gas charge applied to the aggregations. And the way that we calculate that is with this batch balancer target and a discount. And what the goal of that structure is to create a gas charge that applies to aggregate proofs during basically at all times. And it's effectively creating this gas lane for the aggregate proofs that is not in the same kind of gas lane as the rest of the block. But it balances the incentive considerations between kind of being able to aggregate and kind of get this like massive cost saving with kind of like putting things directly on the normal gas lane. So the parameters are set so that to kind of balance between these such that we can try and push a bunch of the gas savings to a lot of the other messages on the network, things like adding deals and sends and all kinds of other things that people will want to use the chain capacity in the main lane for, while also keeping the gas charge and gas charges for aggregation pretty reasonable. So there's the batch balancer works with a discount in this structure where while the base fee is below a certain target, then this kind of batch balancer acts as a minimum cost for aggregation. If you look at the kind of the graphs in the incentive alignment section, you can see how when the base fee is below a certain target, that's this sort of the first graph, then the cost for just throwing a proof directly in the chain as a single proof instead of an aggregate is the cheapest way to do it. And this is basically when the chain is not saturated, where the base fee is low, and so that proceeds. As the chain is getting fuller and fuller and fuller, and the base fee is increasing, then at some point it becomes much more rational to switch over to aggregating proofs. And at that point, most of the activity, if the people want to keep adding more and more onboarding and storage, then that will shift most of the proofs towards the aggregation, and then because that's a much cheaper way to do it gas wise. And as as the base fee keeps going up, then that gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper relatively. So this is sort of targeting a case where there's so this should greatly increase the onboarding capacity, which is great, but also balance incentives with between the achieve miner fairness. This is sort of described in the FIP, but achieve miner fairness, share the gas costs, align pay the network for onboarding this much greater amount of storage, and making base fee spiking attacks harder. There's also like this nasty attack where if you created a very, very cheap way to onboard storage, but then a strategy might be effective where like you spike the base fee up in the normal channel, and then you can keep aggregating very cheaply, but you're not kind of affected by that base fee spike. If people have questions about the mechanism, can take them. I don't know if it's very like the change itself is relatively simple. There's just this gas cost computed for whenever there's an aggregation of proofs, we figure out the gas cost for all of the proofs going into the aggregation, in addition to the actual message on the chain, and then that gas cost is applied separately with a expression in the FIP. Yeah, so it's within the like batch gas charge section, which I'll link here. So yeah, maybe I'll walk through this function. So this like pay batch gas charge is where most of this is set up, and you can think of that as taking two parameters, the number of proofs that are batched and the current base fee. Then kind of the batch discount, batch balancer, and the single proof gas usage are basically network parameters, and you can think of those as constants. Then we just calculate the batch gas charge by taking the number of proofs being batched in this particular proof aggregate, and then we compute the batch gas fee for this proof, which is we take the max of the balancer or the current base fee, and then the gas charge is the gas fee, that batch gas fee times the single proof gas usage, which is that network parameter, times the number of proofs being batched times the discount. So this in practice makes when kind of the base fee is above the target, then this makes the aggregate proofs much cheaper, and so that's passing the gas costs that way. But when the base fee goes lower, which means that there's plenty of capacity in the chain, then most of the usage should move back into the main lane. And that the way that we pay the gas fee is to just do a message send to F99. Cool. So it's a fairly simple change, but how the mechanism works and what it's intended to do and so on is it's complex. So happy to talk through it if there are questions.
Is there a PR associated with this? Since I feel like this was added after FIP 13 was implemented, if I understand correctly. I just kind of want to understand which parts of Lotus and the spec actors have changed, because it doesn't sound like gas calculation has changed in the actors in the gas table itself, but rather in the VM during message execution, if I'm understanding correctly.
No, that's not.
Let me send you. Yeah, so it happens in the actor logic itself. There's a pretty self-contained PR that does it. I sent the FIP PR over. Let me get the actors PR into the Zoom chat.
The FIP PR is PR 100 for the benefit of someone viewing the recording. And yeah, while Zen pulls up the PR, the thing to note is, this gas is the change happens essentially entirely in actors. From an integration perspective, the kind of like new thing is that actors can now ask, the runtime interface now exposes the base fee, the network base fee, which is information that that's always available and was always available. It just wasn't exposed before. So that's kind of a new the integration aspect that this mechanism requires.
Yeah, I think that's the most annoying part of the change. It's weaving the base fee to be provided into the runtime,
which was easy to do in Lotus, but hopefully is easy to do for the other implementations as well. Well, examples of the PR.
I have a question. I'm received from 1475, by the way. Based on my understanding regarding that gas charge equation, the gas charge amount is increasing linearly along with the number of proofs included in that aggregate proof message. So as a miner, I don't feel I am motivated to include more proofs in that aggregate proof, because like if I include 10 proof and 1000 proof, I am charged equally per proof. Is that understanding right? Or
well there's also the charge for the message itself. So for example, if your goal is to add, say, 1,000 sectors, and you are choosing between sending one message with those 1,000 or say 10 messages with 100 each, sending one message with 1,000 is going to be way cheaper, because you're not going to pay the gas cost of the actual message on the chain 9 additional times. You're only going to do it once. So it is still cheaper and rational to aggregate more. The way that the balancer works is you shift to not aggregating when the base fee is below the target. That's the case when it becomes rational to not aggregate proofs. Aggregating an additional proof is just cheaper for you if you pack it into the same message as opposed to breaking it up into more messages.
okay.
And kind of a related question, and this kind of goes to the motivation. And just to reiterate, the gas charge cost charged through this mechanism does not affect the overall block gas limit. Like, it's not going to shrink the capacity that of the number of messages that can be executed in a block. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the usage of this batch gas charge does not apply to does not add up gas costs to the block itself and to the limit. So if you hold all the other messages equal and you just add proofs into an aggregate, that's still the amount, the proof going into the proof message is still the same size, and so it's not gonna increase the
So fundamentally, it doesn't affect chain capacity, but instead allows these benefits to spill onto those other messages, as you said. Yep, sounds good. Cool. Any other questions about this mechanism before Zen jumps into kind of other param tweaking that happened?
I think Zen pulled up the spec actors PR, which is number 1438. If people want to check it out, and so I think Zen, is that the full change for implementing everything?
Yes, that's the full change for everything in FIP PR 100. So it includes the changes we just talked about, and it also includes a few parameter tweaks. So I can whip through those pretty quickly. They correspond to what we talked about 2 weeks ago, I believe, also in the implementers channel, though with maybe a little bit of difference. So we settled on a max aggregate batch size of 819 and did some final gas estimation to motivate both the gas charge and the gas charge function and the minimum batch size for aggregates that's rational. So the gas charge function turns out to be a little bit more complex than we had initially thought through. So by doing empirical measurement of how long it takes to verify aggregates of different sizes. We settled on a logarithmic major component with a minor linear component. And you can look at the whole table, the spec for the function in FitPR 100, and it's also up in FIP 13 now. The others, we went through the aggregate batch size changes. The other thing we just added, we added space onto the pre-commit batch size because there didn't seem to be much reason to not allow greater savings with greater batch sizes. So we increased from 32 to 256 in this PR. And finally, we extended max proof commit duration to 30 days from our original extension of 6 days in order to allow miners with smaller onboarding capacity to get full benefit of batching all up to the aggregate batch size if they're willing to wait the long amount of time it takes to fill up aggregates of that size. Yeah, and that, I guess the last thing is we just set the maximum proof aggregate size to double what we think it should be. But yeah, that's everything right there.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, who has questions about kind of these changes around V5 actors? And Phil's going into them. Okay, sounds good. Yeah, feel free to take some time digesting kind of the latest changes and bring up any questions in the Phil Implementers channel. A couple of other things to flag is we're including FIP 15 in the hyperdrive upgrade. So this reverts FIP 9, which reverts the kind of exemption of direct successful window post messages as a stopgap we put back in December, and we've had like 3 major improvements, in particular optimistic window post, that kind of obviates the need for that by this point. Yeah, so I guess the last thing to talk about in terms of network v13 hyperdrive stuff is kind of the actual execution. So like I said, the Lotus's first RC that implements all of this was released yesterday, and hopefully the mining community in particular begins kind of integration work on that. We'll put it up on some private test networks, and InteropNet for this group of people is going live shortly. So we'll do some testing there, and then kind of next steps will be it'll go on calibration, the public test network, probably sometime next week or so, depending on what we find, depending on how testing goes, with an actual mainnet network upgrade, probably, as we've been saying, second half of June 20th or so is roughly what we're looking at right now. And yeah, we're gonna need to flesh out a little bit of a testing plan to make sure that that the Lotus miner side of things is good, and so that's kind of our immediate next steps. But yeah, we'll see how things go. Any questions about that or anything else about Network v13 really?
Yeah, I'll jump in really quick to say that test vector work generated from actors tests is not totally there yet, but expected to land early next week. So I hope that helps with implementing v13 from other implementations.
Nice, sounds good. Yeah, I think the forest team in particular wakes up every day just wishing they had test vectors. So hopefully it helps. Cool. Any other questions about hyperdrive? Yeah, a couple of other things that were flagged in chat, just kind of housekeeping things. We're planning on doing another Filecoin Ask Me Anything for the hyperdrive upgrade next week. The details themselves will be coming out shortly, but if folks in the community have questions about it, they're welcome to join or pre-submit your questions. Also, if folks in this group would like to attend, so that it's not so that we have other implementations in these Ask Me Anythings, that would be great too. We'll reach out in the Phil Implementers channel to kind of schedule some of that stuff.
Yeah, I think that would be a great place to discuss a lot of the questions around gas and gas usage and gas charge and the aggregations and how they stack up. I think that would be, yeah, really good place for miners and other users to ask about how that would work. So definitely be there.
Excellent. Cool. Anything else on the note of v13, or can we move on to the other items of the agenda, which were these newer FIP PRs that we have and wanted to talk about? Sounds good. We can always take questions async in the Implementers channel. All right, so yeah, I wanted to welcome representatives from 1475 to talk about these two FIP PRs that we have that we're excited to receive. It's nice that more and more of this is being driven by the community. So if we want to, I'll drop a link to pull request 91 in the channel. So this is a proposal to pack arbitrary data in CC sectors and be able to upgrade them later. And if you want to walk through it and kind of go over the outline.
Sure. We created this PR, then we just realized that there was already a discussion regarding that topic very similarly back to January in this year. I think we share the same motivations with that discussion. There are two motivations here based on my understanding. The first one is if miners want to park their data, real data in CC sectors, they should be allowed to do so. But currently, the verification part of CC sector requires that the null data should be used for seal CC sectors. That's the first motivation. The second one is we want to pave the road that after this FIP, we could make deal offline is possible, and even for notaries to approve verified data post seal is possible. So that's our second motivation, and which is not included by this FIP PR, by the way. Probably, if it's okay, I will talk a little bit further for another 1 or 2 minutes for the extension part of this PR. So for this PR itself, again, we want to allow miners to park any data they want in the CC sector. So the detailed steps involved in this is first, of course, miner has to have their data file in their file system one way or another. Then we should provide the CLA command for them to select the data file and to pack into the CC sectors. And then when the state machine is running, when the state machine has that information about the data file, it will change the current add piece logic to park this particular data file or multiple data files into the CC sectors. And one thing I missed in the PRS service that we also should add the key value mapping to the key store, like sector and the PCID and start and end of the. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, just quick interruption. I think it would be just in the interest of time and kind of for the FIP process itself. I think it's good to focus on the protocol level things that need to change, like stuff that has to change in Lotus or some other implementation. That's kind of not that's an implementation detail.
All right.
So I just focus on the kind of like the consensus protocol.
Makes sense. Makes
Yeah,
sense. Yeah. So in consensus part, we should add the unsealed ID in the pre-commit information for later when we prove sectors, we can leverage that. Then we will need to also add the unsealed ID in the seal verify stuff and adding to seal verify stuff structure as well as the sect on-chain info. So with that, in the get verified info method in spec actor, currently it will just get when we get verified info, it will just to check if we have the deal ID of that particular sector. If we have deal IDs, then go back to the market actor and fetch back the PCIDs array. And if not, we just pass the empty, empty data to construct as actually the unsealed ID and verify against that. So we propose the changes to add an unsealed ID in the sealed verified stuff, and then it's not empty, and so logic will choose that to verify in the roster part as the COMD. And if it's still empty, then we do things as is. And I think the last part is we would like to put the unsealed ID field, optional field in the sector on-chain info. That's probably extra overhead for the storage, but again, that will, I think, will pave the way to the next part, which we can verify PCID that client proposed off-chain and verify that PCID against unsealed ID. And then probably notary can determine if this is worth to make it a verified data. Yeah, that's outline of the consensus part.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for providing the PR too. I think I think it'll be good to maybe split them the way you have in kind of the first phase, which is what's in this PR, and then a second phase of like possibly future improvements where yes, you can upgrade to be verified and so on.
Right.
Yeah, so kind of kicking it off. I'm personally a fan of this idea. I'm glad I've thought it would be good to have for a while, and I'm glad the discussion is moving forward a little bit. I know not everyone feels that way. In terms of so just a couple of thoughts. I think we can kind of, there's three factors here we discuss that we need to think about. Like first off, whether it's good to have, whether we want, whether it's a benefit for the network in general. Second, kind of some of the implementation impacts. So stuff like does how much does a new field impact state size and that kind, or maybe does it affect the time it takes to like process a pre-commit or proof-commit message. And kind of the third impact is, or third thing to consider is kind of security. Like, does this change for some reason make it easier to fake data or fake storage for some reason? But on the whole, I'm personally, I think it's a good idea. What does everyone else think?
I don't think I quite understand this. So is the idea adding, so inside of a pre-commit message, adding a new field that has a list of piece IDs, but the sector is that like those files don't actually get sealed, or like I don't really understand that part.
I can try to rephrase it to make sure I understand too. I think the idea is, so currently a CC sector with no deals has to have a certain precise data value. The idea is to specify piece IDs that are not associated with deal IDs, which can then be used to create a COMD, which is unique to this sector, and then seal over that. Currently, it has to be like all zeros, I think, in the data. Does that line up with what you're saying, A? Am I understanding correctly?
Right, that's correct. Yeah.
Just a quick question. Why is producing one single unverified deal not good enough? Is it just the complexity of having a client producing a deal and so on? Or is there something about the initial sealing process that is making that pathway like too hard and then this be more attractive?
Oh, sorry, I'm not sure I follow your question.
So a different pathway to achieve the same thing you're trying to do is to make one very large unverified deal for the whole sector and add that at the very beginning. Is that too complex or difficult here? Is that like too, and this, yeah, I guess maybe I don't fully understand why that pathway is way too expensive or too hard to follow, because it seems to kind of arrive at the same, at a similar, if not the same kind of outcome.
Right, that's of course that's a possible approach to achieve the same. And the only thing is that we think that deal is probably expensive, and with more and more verified data and deals. Can you guys hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think well, moving forward, although with this coming upgrade of V13, the block will become empty, but with more and more deal, the block limit will gradually be filled. And considering in the future, we probably will onboard smart contract, which will also consume a lot of gas and limit, I suppose. So that's just saving some space in the block.
Yeah, and I'd kind of add, yeah, there's all of the complications that come with the deal, or not complications, but the additional restrictions that come with the deal, I suppose, where there's the cost of the message itself, and then you do have to put up some collateral, and maybe you set the storage price to 0, but that's still kind of like some additional things you have to think about. So I think I see an argument for why this is better.
Okay.
Yeah, I think getting just making that clear in the FIP would be very useful for everybody else to kind of maybe compare the two pathways of saying, here's a pathway doing an unverified deal, and like just how expensive or problematic it is, and therefore why this other thing would be useful. It could be good. So this is effectively an implicit deal. So even if it's not kind of, if it's trying to kind of bypass it by not having to go over the machinery, it would be interesting to see if we can kind of classify it as a deal somehow in the chain, and kind of still achieve your goal to, make it cheaper, make it less annoying, and so on. Because yeah, I think the goal of allowing more data onboarding is great. I think having an implicit deal that the chain doesn't know is a deal until later is a little bit painful, and it can create other annoyances. So because a lot of people are tracking the amount of deals as a proxy for data usage and whatnot. And so it would be good to get that information on the chain. But yeah, if it's too expensive, then understood. But I think describing all this in the FIP, I think, would be useful for people.
All right, I will do some, quantify research on that. Okay.
Yeah, and also like regarding, I don't know if I agree that this is strictly an implicit deal, in that it's an implicit deal, or it's a deal that you're making with yourself in some sense, where I think the argument that I feel most persuaded by is like, if I as a miner want to, store the tech stuff, my diary in my sector, then that is something I should be able to do, which I currently cannot do without making a deal with myself and then having those complications. So that's kind of what I see motivating this the most.
Yeah, I mean, so one thing that I think is missing also from the FIP, with touching on what you just talked about, Ayush, is like the incentive considerations in that portion of the FIP. It says there's no impact on existing incentives, but clearly there is if a miner is able to make deals with themselves. Going back to like the whole implicit deal thing, it's like maybe instead of, like going through the storage market mechanism, I can go directly to a miner as a client instead, and then they'll be storing all of this, bypassing like the whole machinery, like Juan said before. So I think there is like impacts potentially on incentive considerations, and I think I'd be a little bit more confident in this if that was analyzed a bit further.
Yeah, agreed. And I also feel the same way about security considerations. Like I think there is some thinking to be done here, some work to be done before we can feel completely good about it. But no, so on the like we can write down all of the things that we're flagging in this as action items, and then bring that to the FIP and iterate on it there. But I think it's a really cool idea, and thanks again for opening it.
Right.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. One last thing, just to think about when updating the FIP in response to the question of tracking, of being able to track data that's on chain in this way. In order for it to work at all, we're going to need to include piece size along with piece CIDs. So while it will be in a different place on chain, all of this information will still exist. So I think that strengthens the argument for using this. Yeah, just a thought.
Okay. Yeah. Regarding, yeah, I think we can definitely add PCID in on-chain info, unless you guys feel that will be too expensive for miner to store. But anyway, so about the last argument regarding the incentive consideration or security consideration, I think we will have two separate CIPs. The first one is this one, which only allow miners to pack some real data in the CC sectors. So from my perspective, I might be wrong, but from my perspective, the security incentive or self include those data is trivial because there is no mechanism to allow them to upgrade these sectors into a verified one. So such should be trivial from my perspective. Of course, like I said, the second motivation is pave the way for the second FIP, I guess, is to make this part of piece can be upgraded by notary or something. That should be take it seriously and to secure the chain. So that's just my perspective. For this particular FIP itself, I think it's just like not that serious impact the security part. Again, that's just my my thought on this.
Yep, I agree. I think, and we can include these in kind of the action items for the FIP. I think it would be really useful to introduce a new future improvements section, or like what this unlocks section in the FIP itself, in which we can talk about this idea that you bring up, an idea that Juan brings up, which is the ability to upgrade an unverified deal to a verified deal after the fact, which is related to kind of this conversation. So I think that would motivate the FIP a bit more.
Right.
I'll compile a list of essentially kind of action items that we're talking about, and then we'll take this conversation to the FIP.
Thank you.
Cool. And yes, Jennifer flags that I think the community in general will be interested in this, so we can definitely discuss this in the PhilFips channel in Filecoin Slack, which is the right place for this conversation to keep happening. Cool. In the interest of time, I do want to get to the second FIP PR that you have. So maybe let's put a pin in conversations around packing arbitrary data in CC sectors for now, and move on to the alleviate penalty discussion that you started.
Right. For that PR, I just included two FIPs actually. So the first one is kind of emergency upgrade for the network when the government ban Filecoin mining across the country. But seems like in the recent day update, it becomes very unlikely to go to that extreme. So we can just put that first FIP on hold, I guess, unless things change dramatically in the coming days or week. And for the second one, which allow miner to flexible choose their start date and end date, to stop submit window post. I think we still need to consider it because except the policy change or government change, there are other possibilities like natural disaster will cut off the infrastructure supply for a while. And in that real, although it's real, but in that circumstances, I think it's still nice to allow miner to choose, their maintenance window. So basically, from the consensus part of this FIP, we will basically allow we will add two methods. One is stop, another is resume, to indicate miner wants to stop their regular operation and resume their regular operation. And as soon as the stop message is submitted, all the miner's power will be zeroed out. And the only operation this miner is allowed is to submit the resume method. Other operation like pre-commit or commit or window post will be prohibited. Of course, mining is not allowed too during the 900 epochs after the power is zeroed out. Such a basic idea of this, and we can also allow miner to put more pledge to allow them to extend their 14 days mandatory sectors termination. Yeah, so basically it's the proposed item in this FIP.
Quick question. So I find the argument very persuasive that yes, any number of crises could cause something like this to be necessary. Is the proposal that this that these methods, the pause and resume methods, can be that you can send a message to these methods at any time, or is the proposal that like we have these methods in the background and also put like some trigger that the network can pull? So like if there is, let's say, a natural disaster, then the network essentially has an emergency network upgrade in which we then enable these methods. I don't understand which one it is.
I think currently I don't propose some automatic trigger mechanism in here, because the assumption is the bad event is happened locally. So the miner can still submit, even their IDC has been cut off, they can still submit this stop method from elsewhere, as long as they have their private key.
Yep. Yeah. In that case, I think my chief, like, it's an interesting proposal. I think it's yeah, there's definitely cases when it's useful, but it somewhat undermines kind of one of Filecoin's underlying principles of your data is secure and being proven every 24 hours. If there's now a mechanism where miners can declare that they're not going to be proving their data but want to be exempt from the usual penalties, that's a little tricky. Like, what would this do for deals in these sectors is unclear to me.
Well, for the deal part, I think the payment channel will still running, and the query data, of course, will not be working, because whenever you submit the stop method or not, your infrastructure has been cut off, presumably. So query will not working definitely. But the good side is if the cutoff is longer than 14 days, on current mechanism, the client will lose their data in that miner permanently. But with this, there is still a chance for the miner to bring client's data back.
But that's kind of what the declare fault mechanism is supposed to be doing, right? And does right now, is miners can declare faults and then recover them at a certain point. This is almost like a declare longer fault in some sense.
Declare longer fault, probably cheaper fault in some sense. Yeah.
I have a question with respect to this. Like I feel like, yeah, like this is like a real problem, like if an earthquake like hits like, big area or something, but I'm just wondering like what kind of security considerations we should take in here. Like I think it's quite dangerous to take off like half of the network's storage power. Like just I can see like weird attacks happening from this. Just wondering if if this is the best solution or if there's another alternative for this.
Well, I think the assumption is that this disaster event is happened locally, not across, continent or something like that. So with that, I think maybe there is a better way to do that, but currently that's our proposal to handle this. And of course, security barriers need to be considered. So during the maintenance window, I think the penalty still need to be applied for that miner. But with what level of that fee can still maintain the security or the negative incentive for miner to abuse this mechanism. I think we still need some work to do regarding the crypto economics.
Yeah, that's here. I think in general, the idea of being able to help miners through disasters is a great idea, and being able to kind of handle. There's a lot of different kinds of events that can happen really suddenly. I think having structures that can help in those situations is a really good idea. I think the ability to at will turn off a huge section of the network with no or a very small fee is definitely a security and economic consideration. There's all kinds of potential problems there, as Eric was saying. There are potentially a bunch of security attacks that become viable at that point. So I think we need to do analysis on that kind of stuff. I think also there could be a thing around having something like a verifiable disaster oracle or something like that, where there can be like a network-wide checking of that there is indeed like some direct problem affecting miners in specific regions. I think right now the infrastructure for making that kind of thing possible is being built. It's going to take a while for that to happen, but things like bridges connecting to other chains, getting contracts, there's FIPS and proposals and so on to add EVM and other things like that. Being able to kind of have an oracle that kind of declares disasters in regions would then allow much easier penalty waiving here. But I do think kind of like there are some important security considerations that I think like the current proposal is probably not accounting. So I would say discuss those and find possibly other pathways.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we all agree that it's well motivated. Like the use case is very real here, but it's not an easy problem to solve. And it's a tricky thing it's easily exploitable, and there's a whole bunch of considerations. So I think we'll keep the discussion going for now, for sure. And again, summarize the conversation that we had here today and get input from the community. But this one I think is a little harder to move on for now.
Okay, that's fine.
Sounds good. Thanks. So we are past time, and I want to be mindful of that. But also, if folks have questions or things that are blocking them, feel free to bring them up now. But also feel free to drop if you need to. All right. Yeah. As always, feel free to bring things up async in Slack. But thanks a lot for your time. This was a meaty call. I like how much stuff we discussed. And thank you very much for joining from 1475. Cool. Bye everyone.
See you.
Yeah.